Welcome to another episode of Splash Considerations. My name is Justice De Los Santos, San Francisco Giants beat reporter for the San Jose Mercury News. I'm joined by Shayna Rubin, friend of the program, Shayna Rubin, baseball reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle, and this has randomly been sneakily been one of the longest days of the entire spring. We obviously had the news that Hayden Birdsong is officially going to undergo Tommy John. We had the spring breakout game, so we had the opportunity to talk with a couple minor leaguers, even if you want to consider the fact that Barry Bonds is going to be a guest analyst as part of the Netflix broadcast. Even that was kind of part of the news cycle. And, even with all that, I'll be honest, Shayna, I wasn't planning for us to record today. I was going to wait till Saturday. I was going to wait till the final day of camp. We can have a big, larger discussion. And I'm sure we'll talk about all of those subjects during the final day of camp. But I think today necessitates, I don't want to call it an emergency podcast. This is not exactly an emergency, but I would say expediting the process because the fate of one Bryce Eldridge has indeed been decided. He is going to start the season with Triple-A Sacramento. He's not going to be on the Giants opening day roster. And I think the part that I'll just start off with you is I think at this juncture in the spring, this doesn't come as much of a surprise at this point.
That's where we're starting.
That's where we're starting.
Yeah, it's not much of a surprise. I think I was a little surprised I don't know why it's the end of spring, and I don't know why it still threw me off. I think I was surprised at my reaction. I was like, oh, it's happening already. Oh, okay.
I think that's the more surprising part.
Yeah, but we're almost at the end, so maybe I shouldn't have been that surprised. I think if you asked me a few weeks ago, I wouldn't say that this would have been a sure thing, but as spring progressed, it became pretty clear to my understanding and sight that he definitely needs, he needs, I don't want to say confidence at the plate, but there's a gap between what he's capable of and sort of the comfortability of what he's capable of.
It's like 9:30. It's hard to pronounce words
I
at
don't
this
know.
time.
I don't know if that was actually it, but
that's close
hopefully
enough.
You get the point.
But I go back to, you can, in retrospect now, you can read between the lines as to a lot of what was said earlier in spring training, and even going back to the first time we talked with President of Baseball Operations Buster Posey about it. If you just, again, in retrospect, it's really easy to see. I don't want to say really easy, but it's easier to see that, maybe he wasn't super excited about the prospect of Bryce being on the opening day roster, because even if we go back to 2024, 2025, he would constantly reference that he wanted to slow play Bryce. And one of the things that really stuck out, again, of those super early conversations in spring training was that Tony Vitello constantly mentioned this idea of repetitions. He mentioned it with Bryce, but I also remember he talked about it with Patrick Bailey and Drew Gilbert in kind of unrelated subjects, but Vitello just kind of hammered home this point of repetitions. And when you hear that, and then you combine it with the fact that Bryce has not had a lot of repetitions with Triple-A Sacramento. The numbers are fresh in mind, but 321 plate appearances with Sacramento, about 500, almost 500 even above high A, so not even a full season's worth of plate appearances. There just hasn't been a ton of reps for Bryce. And again, it'd be one thing, I've mentioned this point a lot, it'd be one thing if he was just tearing it up at all levels of the minors and was kind of forcing his way to the major leagues. But as we've seen kind of in spring training, and even as we saw with Sacramento last year, that hasn't necessarily been the case. And as Logan Webb said after today's start, it's not necessarily a bad thing either for him to start the season in Sacramento, because again, he's only 21. I think we were both in college when we were 21.
Yeah,
so
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
He can drink now. Last year he couldn't drink.
He can drink now.
Things are happening for him.
Big
things are happening for him that aren't even baseball related. But yeah, it's all about the reps with him. I think it's one of those things that obviously with a top prospect and obviously with the type of ceiling he has, and obviously when you think about, Bryce at his best and with Rafael Devers in this lineup, and suddenly you start to have sort of this a dream casting of
grand visions
and, of what could be if he's at his best. And I think maybe for Giants fans who want that to finally come to fruition, and they want to see a higher ceiling, they want to see something more explosive offensively, and they want and I'm not going to put this on the fans. I think it's like a fair ask.
That's fair.
You want your top prospect with the type of potential that he has to come up and really elevate things, and you keep waiting for the elevation. You keep waiting for the moment where they're going to take this next step offensively. So it's just, it all makes sense logically, where it's like, okay, obviously he needs more reps defensively and at the plate. Everything needs to sort of coincide into a more complete player, and he's not really a complete player yet in terms of his capabilities at the big league level. But the anticipation
is also not like a crazy statement.
Not a crazy statement. I think it's fine for where he's at. He didn't play that much at Triple-A, so it's one of those things where you just. You would have liked to see him really just knock the door down, but you're also not surprised that he didn't.
Yeah, I think it's fair because, again, we were fans at some point, and I think it was fair, especially because I mentioned Barry Bonds earlier. Like, he's going to be part of, this Netflix broadcast. It's obviously the first time Netflix is ever dipping its toes into these waters, and, if you kind of just go, like, full vision, like imagine Bryce Eldridge on the third baseline, Aaron Judge on the first baseline, these 2 6'7" guys, and like obviously Judge earlier with the Team USA exhibition was like, I want Bryce to be part of the next team, and then like this super like it would just be a lot of fun. Like I think we've mentioned that, like it just would have been a lot of fun, and again for the fan base, if you're a fan and you think that, like that is completely and totally fine, but. Unfortunately, Buster Posey, Zach Manassian, Jeremy Shelley, the Giants brass as a whole, as much as I'm pretty sure like they would have loved that scenario to unfold too, it's just not going to come to fruition. And everyone's pretty much universally agreeing to that he's not going to be on the opening day roster. That doesn't mean he's not going to contribute at some point this season. At this point, it would be shocking, if he kind of wasn't called. Like if there was just some crazy scenario where we just didn't see him at all. And I've brought up this kind of parallel a lot. 2009, we were not covering the Giants at this time.
No.
we were a couple years away. But 2009, Buster Posey makes his debut at the end of September, gets his cup of coffee, starts next season in Sacramento. Well, Fresno. They were still Fresno at the time. And then comes up in May, wins Rookie of the Year. The Giants win the World Series. And I'm not making the direct comparison. I'm not saying Bryce is going to come up in there magically, because of that. This is not the direct comparison. But, this is kind of, as far as getting his cup of coffee, starting later, it's kind of that similar trajectory to what Buster did. And it kind of the irony being that Buster is now the one making that decision.
Yeah, I like the little parallel there.
I said that to Shay. He's like, you're a history kid.
Yeah.
Anytime I can make John Shay proud, it makes me happy.
Especially with history stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like he's just a history buff, walking history buff.
Yeah. So I think the question now is, well, not necessarily a question, but I think it frees up a lot of the conversation in regards to the roster composition, because I'm sure for sure in stories that I've written, I'm sure in stories that you've written as well, it's kind of been this conversation of, well, we need to wait for the Eldridge domino to fall. Like once the Eldridge domino falls, then we can start envisioning what the rest of this roster is going to look like. And, it's unfortunate news for Bryce Eldridge, of course, and Tony Vitello said after today's game that he took it like a pro. I think this is good news for Luis Matos. We've talked about Luis and Gerard being out of options, and I think the path for both of them to now be on the opening day roster, I think it was easy to say like Gerard specifically would kind of make his way onto the roster, but now with Eldridge for sure not going to be on the team, it does kind of clear that path for Matos to be on the open day roster, and kind of he gets this kind of second life, not necessarily second life, but a chance that wasn't necessarily guaranteed to him at the start of camp.
Definitely, and I think it eliminates the uncomfortability. I mean, I'm saying all these words that I'm not capable of saying today.
It's
uncomfortability.
It's 10:12.
Is that the word?
It's 10:12. It's been a long day. Uncomfortableness.
The uncomfortable and uneasiness of having to make a decision on both of them. I mean, the no options players around this time, it always becomes what's going to happen here with that? Yeah. So it I don't know. I'm not going to say that it eliminates the dilemma, but it definitely puts into picture what they're potentially thinking with those two.
Yeah, they almost have like a Rule 5 draft status in a sense, because it's not just the opening day roster either. Like these guys have to be on the team for like the entirety of the year, because at this point, again, you can't option them at any point. If you do, you got to DFA them, trade them, wherever to get them off the team. And again, like with Matos in particular, I think I think it's a fair assessment to say, like, he's probably best. Like, I think we've seen the best of Matos when he's gotten, like, consistent plate appearances. And so now it's kind of going to be a similar-ish situation to last year. And I think, this is not a shock because you got Elliott in left, Bader in center, Jung-Hoo in right. But it's going to be another situation where he's going to have to maximize what he does in a role off the bench. And if this is the role that the Giants end up going with Matos and Girard, and you've kind of, anticipate the rest of the bench with Schmidt, well, I guess in that, Schmidt, Koss, and then presumably Daniel Susac because Jesus Rodriguez was optioned yesterday. That's not even a very right-handed hitting bench. That is just all righties. And I think the reason I've always put Will Brennan in my roster projections is just because the lefty presence, and also it's, they have seen a lot of Matos and he just hasn't, performed up to standard. But again, he is 24. He does have just the great bat-to-ball skills, and nothing's guaranteed, nothing's official, but if we see Luis Matos on that third base line on March 25th against the Yankees, at this point I wouldn't be shocked. It becomes less of, again, these are not shocking things, but it seems more of a possibility now than it was at the start of today.
Yeah, I mean, with Matos being in that bench role is, it's hard because his biggest issue has been he has these big hot stretches where it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're seeing the real Luis Matos now, and can it stick? And then within a few days, weeks, it just goes completely 180, and it's hard to deal with the hot and cold when you're riding the bench sometimes. So it's a tricky path for Matos, and it has been for a while.
Yeah, but again, he's only 24. Bryce is only 21. I'm still in my late 20s now. As I'm saying these ages, I'm like, I'm getting up there. Hey, I've been an uncle for literally half my life. I think I've long achieved unk status. But going back to Bryce, we obviously did mention the offense, and one quick point I'll mention is that striking out, whiffing, it's pretty much, I don't want to say always going to be part of his offensive profile, but that just kind of is his offensive profile. I don't think you should expect like an Luis Arraez transformation out of him, but it's going to be about reducing the whiff, reducing the strikeouts to a more manageable rate. But
hello?
What was that? Was that the water?
It was a whale.
A what?
It was water.
Oh, jeez.
Something spit water out of us.
They're trying to get. That's our signal. We got to wrap this up. But I think the one last thing to mention about Eldridge is that the defense, from what Vitello has said, from what Ron Washington has said, I think the defense has made a substantial improvement. And when you consider that this was a guy who didn't have a position really when he was drafted and only picked up first base ahead of the 2024 season, I think it is significant that he has made the strides that he has made on the defensive end. Yeah,
it doesn't seem like they're trying to, play him up either. It does seem, and you watch him and you can see that the strides are really real for him defensively. The footwork is much better than anticipated at this juncture. So, yeah, the strides defensively for him at first base are real, I'd say.
Ron Washington's never going to be the type to gas somebody up that is not deserving of being gassed up. And I think to kind of wrap things up here, as far as, when is Bryce Eldridge going to be on the team, putting a definitive answer on that, we just don't know at this junction. Like, I think it's really just going to depend on, it's going to depend on how he plays at Sacramento. But I think we are at a point now with Eldridge. I will say this, where last year I think Buster was trying to, temper expectations as much as possible to make it, almost, I don't want to say he didn't want to put him on the team at any point, like by any means necessary, but, it wasn't his preference. I think now we're at a juncture where he's had his debut, he's had his taste of like his first real Major League camp, and what I mean by that is like Major League camp with the intention of trying to make the team. I think when he performs and like when the bat is going good, I think we're just going to see him up here. It's not going to be we want him to have more reps. I think if he puts together like a 3-4 week stretch, I think we just see him up. I don't think they're going to play around with it, especially because of, again, like the ceiling of this offense is predicated on Eldridge being good. And this is not to place, again, the weight of the world on a 21-year-old, but again, to kind of take the macroscopic view of this, like if the Giants want to be competitive in the NL West both this year and the next couple years, like they are going to need Bryce to be the person they want to be. And in order for that to happen, it is kind of necessary for him to start the season in Triple-A Sacramento, again, as much as fans may not want to hear that.
Agreed.
Is that the most poetic thing that I've said this entire? That's like probably the most coherent thing. I didn't think I was going to have the potential to say anything that
course.
coherent. But that'll wrap it up for today. Again, we're probably going to link back around, 2 days from now at this point, have a much longer conversation about camp, about the way that everything's done. But, considering that this is kind of the central question that we have been waiting for the entirety of spring, we just thought it was probably in the best interest to knock this out now, as opposed to we got to get the SEO. We got to get that good SEO.
The SEO
headline
content
to get the good. We got to feed the beast. We got to give. It's like what Jalen Rose said. We got to give the people what they want. Justice De Los Santos, San Jose Mercury News, Shayna Rubin, San Francisco Chronicle. See y'all later.